Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for First Fridays Connected, the online version of our First Fridays series. We hope you're all staying healthy and safe. We hope you can join us again on May 8th and June 5th for more inspiring and thought-provoking discussions and lively music. We would like to give a big thanks to our presenting sponsor, XPRIZE, and our media and event sponsors, KCRW, Bank of America, and Spaceland Presents. Don't forget to join other First Fridays Connected programming this evening at 6 p.m. Tune in to the discussion on the future of crowdsourced science, moderated by Pat Morrison. And at 7:30 p.m., KCRW DJ Novena Carmel will be spinning at the DJ Lounge. If you have already registered, you should have received an email from NHM with the links for these programs. Or for more information, you can go to the First Fridays Connected page at nhm.org. Now it is with great pleasure to introduce our host and resident museum expert that will guide you through the hidden secrets and untold stories of the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. First, our host, Alie Ward, science correspondent and host of the beloved podcast, Ologies. On Ologies this coming Tuesday, the topic is Nasology. April 28th, Alie talks to taxidermist Alice Markham. Joining Alie this evening is Yolanda Bustos, museum's archivist and library research manager. So please welcome Alie and Yolanda.
Hello, Yolanda.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. It's so nice to hang out on a Friday with the coolest people ever, NHM people. So it feels like almost like back to normal. Oh. Thank you so much for being here. Now you are in the archive department at the NHM. Can you explain a little bit about what is the difference between the archive and the collections? What does it mean to be an archivist?
Sure. The archives is, I'm responsible for the institutional archives, so basically the institutional memory of the whole organization. While many things are maintained in collection, like the objects that they would get while they were on an expedition, all the little details about that, the correspondence that took place to plan, all the context for that, that's all in my collection. So we've got photographs and everything kind of about the museum and the museum's history. I maintain all of that.
Oh, how many objects are there?
I have no idea.
That's the right answer, I'm sure, because how could you even keep track of it? Now, you studied library science, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How long did you know that you wanted to be like a very, very cool librarian?
I don't know that I knew that until I went to library school.
Really?
To be honest. I was an artist and a bookmaker primarily, and it was through that process that I discovered that archives were really cool things, really cool places where all these things are kept. And that's when I fell in love with that process. But I don't think I really fully understood what that meant until I went to school and kind of got deep into it. That this is what I do. But I think you're kind of always born an archivist if you're the type of person who like arranges things naturally. And it's very particular, Capricorn, maybe. You are probably an archivist.
What does your bookshelf at home look like? Because I know that there's such a debate between putting your books in order of color versus topic, and I want to know what an archivist does at home.
I have very few books at this point because I am an adherent to libraries. Uh-huh. So I have a very active, well-used library card, and I only keep a small amount of books. But my books, I keep like the most beloved books, and I organize them by author, kind of a more traditional approach. They're not really aesthetically pleasing, but I know where they are always. And then it's kind of chronological. I think it's not, the Library of Congress or anything.
I'm with you though, because when they're in color order, for some reason it irks me because I just think like, where is there a philosophy section? Like, is this fiction? Is this not? Like, I feel like books are like a dinner party where I want the ones that would have good conversations to be near each other. I don't know, but maybe that's just me. But now, can you tell me a little bit about some of the standout pieces that are in your collection? Some pieces that have like a special place in your heart or your memory?
There are so many cool things. I mean, the best part of being an archivist is that you're constantly opening up boxes and finding new things. So I can't say that there's like one thing necessarily that I love more than anything, but there are certainly some things that I'm endeared to. I'll show you some stuff if you don't mind.
Let's see.
There's this period in the 80s where dinosaurs were very colorful.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got this oviraptor. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Just look at the look on his face. I really appreciate that guy.
He's like, what's up?
Right. And there's like these bright colors. And then there's this thing called Feed the Kitty. So in the 70s at the tar pits, there was a campaign to do some fundraising, and it was like pennies from pockets that were getting thrown in this kitty.
Oh!
And it was set up in the museum, and you can actually stick your hand into his little mouth, and it would deposit in kind of an unsavory way into a lucite box underneath him, whatever change. And I think there was several $1,000s that way, just from students placing some cash.
So it's like a kitty bank and not a piggy bank.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think there's a tiny little picture here that I don't know if I can blow this up at all, but
oh wow, that's amazing too.
Yeah, there's a little kitty down at the bottom. Uh-oh, I just got an alert saying that my battery was low.
Oh no! Do you need to go get a plug-in?
Maybe, yeah. Sorry, guys.
You get a plug-in, and I'll show my most egregious bookbinding problem. This is going to kill you. Look at this.
Oh no!
I know. Okay, this is you go get that, and I'll explain. I'll apologize aesthetically. So watchers, listeners, this is a copy of Grey's Anatomy that I bought at a thrift store for, I think the price is still in here, $1 from 1937, an old Grey's Anatomy from 1937. And obviously like it wasn't, in great condition. Also, if y'all have questions.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. I was just lamenting over this 1937 copy of Grey's Anatomy I got for $1 that it needs.
Oh, wow.
I know it needs some help, but also if anyone has questions for an archivist, you can leave them here and we'll be discussing your questions in the last half here. But yeah, so you have seen, obviously in your collection, you have a lot of books. You mentioned that there's a really small book.
A tiny book, the tiniest thing in our library. It's the Olympic Oath from 1968. Let me share that with you.
The Olympic Oath. Now, what is the Olympic Oath exactly?
It's just a few lines long, and I guess it's what the Olympiads say at the beginning of the Olympics, or I don't know exactly what it is. I didn't pull up an actual picture of the pages, or I could have just read it to you.
Oh, that's beautiful, though. Oh my gosh, is that embossed, like on a embossed cover?
What? Yeah, it has silver embossing. It's super, super tiny, and it's housed in a tiny box with a magnifying glass on top. It's about 16 pages, and it's the Olympic Oath in 7 different languages.
Wow. Do you know how you acquired that? How it got in collections?
No.
Oh my gosh.
No, we find all kinds of interesting things. Yeah.
What is a myth that, I wanted to ask you too about myths about archivists and librarians. Do you have a character in movies or TV that gets archivists or people that work in libraries right? Or do you feel like most of them get them wrong? I have to say that every person I know who has majored in library science and had a master's in it are like total badasses and like work in a library and also do like roller derby and like boxing and stuff. And so I feel like there's maybe a dichotomy of being really orderly and then also being like super tough.
Maybe. I mean, superheroes in some ways. No, I feel like they're kind of a mixed bag. I was thinking about this recently, and examples that you'd see in movies. And often, like you'll see some kind of common tropes. Like, I am a really big Paddington fan. Did you watch the Paddington Bear movies?
No, I mean I know who he is, but I wish I watched all of them.
You need to get deep in the Paddington Bear series. It'll warm your heart in these troubled times. In the first Paddington Bear, they go to the Explorers Club and they go to this archives, and there are some things that get right and some things get wrong. And, archives are all different from place to place. So it's hard to say that an archives is one way or an archives isn't one way. And the one in this particular case was very beautiful. And my archives is subterranean and it's just a set of shelves. So that's exciting. I've never used a pneumatic tube, so that's on the table. And there's kind of a lot of rumors that archives know everything in their collection, and that's just, usually it's just one person working through a lot of things. So often we don't get to really know a collection until somebody asks for it, and we get to spend a lot of time with it. And that's really where a lot of the discovery happens, and that's when we learn and grow. So over time, you get to be a real expert, but coming into something, if you ask me about something, it takes a lot of work for me to kind of get to that information. I just don't often know top of my head.
And how much of the collection is digitized, and how much are y'all working toward digitizing it? I imagine that's a huge undertaking, right?
Sure. When I got to the museum, I kind of looked around at what we had that was super vulnerable. And I decided that our acetate negatives were really the most vulnerable thing. So we've really steadily been working on digitizing that part of the collection. And it's slow, I'll be honest. So that's what we're working on first. And still only a percentage has been done. I would say maybe 5% of the collection has been done. But it's something we hope to get done over time. And then there's so much, the dream would be to digitize every page in every collection, but that's a lot of work. Baby steps.
And in that collection, you mentioned that you have books, you have journals, you have field notes. It's all kinds of material, not just bound volumes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have, anything basically. We do have the research library as well, which is separate from the archives, so that would have more published materials. But the archives is going to have a lot of field books, a lot of illustration, a lot of photographs, some really random ephemera, a lot of bits of exhibits that have been on walls. Basically everything that the museum has ever made that we've managed to hang on to.
Mm-hmm. Any good handwriting that you've come across?
The more poor handwriting than good.
Really? A little hot goss in the archives. So you mean people will just chicken scratch super important field notes?
Yeah. If we're talking about the future of transcription and digitization and those things, that might be a really big project. In the future, when we start digitizing field notes and putting those up online, I may need everybody's eyes on these projects trying to figure out what a word actually is, because sometimes it just looks like, worse than your doctor's handwriting. You know what that is. Sometimes they're typed, and that's wonderful.
Oh, I'm sure that must be such a relief if you've had a very chicken scratchy day. We have a couple questions from people who are watching too. Diane Charlin wants to know, what is the best or worst fieldwork fail you've ever encountered? So that's they explain that that's when something doesn't go right for a scientist, goes perfectly wrong. So spilling solution. Or have you ever had have you ever been in a real bind with a book? Had any kind of fail when it comes to archiving, or have you ever had a book disintegrate in your hands? What do you do?
Those might be two different questions. As far as something disintegrating in your hands, certainly I've come across things that are super fragile and start to kind of crumble. Usually we'll try and notice that before we pull something off or out of the box and address it straight away and stabilize it somehow. If I need help beyond what I'm able to do, we're really lucky to have two conservators on staff who are a lot smarter about that than I am, so I just call them up. But as far as something in fieldwork, maybe that I've noticed something going wrong for a scientist, that's a good question. I don't know about fieldwork so much, but certainly in correspondence you get a lot of dirt, things like once during the Depression, staff was cut way, way back, and they were trying to do pest management internally, I guess, and they basically almost poisoned an entire floor by letting some gas off in an office without really consulting. I mean, nobody was harmed in this process, but it got a firm talking to about protocol for how to actually properly
fumigate.
Yeah.
DIY fumigation before YouTube, not a good idea.
Even after, maybe not. Leave it to the pros.
Right. And you know, this leads to a question I'm sure you get a lot. And an anonymous attendee wanted to ask, what is the spookiest thing you've discovered in the collection? What's something real creepy?
There's quite a few things. So we were just talking about this recently, about how many people, there was a big thread going around about the creepiest thing in your collection, and a lot of people were talking about hair in their collection. And I was like, wait a minute. But it turns out I found 2 letters addressing hair, one from 1917. It was a thank you letter to somebody named Mrs. Baldy. I'm not even kidding, Baldy.
That's a little on the nose, but okay.
Thanking her for a donation of a framed hair wreath. And another letter from 1920 asking if they wanted to buy a wreath, if the museum wanted to buy a wreath made from the hair of school children.
Ooh, that's specific.
Yeah.
But also not specific enough. Like which school children? Ooh, yay.
And certainly there's a lot of, quite a bit of material in the library that's really creepy. I'll share this guy with you.
Ooh.
This is Clown Putty Face, the quick change artist.
Oh no. Oh
no. Scroll
no.
through quickly all these pages. Oh wait, let's go back one page. It's written by Lothar Mogendorfer, which I thought was an amazing name.
That's incredible.
And this is a real physical book that we have in our library to this day.
That's amazing.
I don't know why. There you go.
Have you ever wanted to use that as like a handle, like a fake Twitter handle, like Logar Morton? That's a great alias, dude. I might steal that.
I'll hand you the deets afterwards.
Do you have any haunted books, or is the museum haunted? Jolene wants to know. I want to know also.
There are certainly reports. So our archives is made up partially of the work of our former employee, and I believe she was the head of education for many years, probably like 50 years. Her name was Gretchen Sibley, really cool lady. And she gathered all these anecdotes as part of her work. So there's a big collection of ghost stories, and mostly from the 60s and 70s, and mostly taking place on the 3rd floor, which is where my office is. Hooray.
Oh man.
So there's a lot of reports of talking and whistling and faraway hammering sounds, and people's hair standing up on the back of their ends. But there's one particular report from the 70s of 2 employees who were mixing up green soap, which coats the inside of the specimen or the fossil molds, the jackets they put on fossils to prevent sticking. So one employee was stirring with a really large spatula, and he reported that he let go and that the spatula stood up still for a bit and then started spinning in the other direction for a full minute. And the solution was really viscous, so they couldn't really figure out a reason. They just attributed it to ghosts. I've yet to see anything.
That's pretty cool, though, if a ghost is willing to do your work for you. I mean, there are worse things. You're like, I'm going to go take 5. Like, you finished your... Yeah. You're like, oh, somebody cleaned the bathroom. I guess it was a ghost. Brendan wants to know, Brendan Layden asked, do you have any original work from Darwin or Einstein or any other well-known scientists that you have to be kind of careful with?
We have a 2nd edition Origin of the Species, which is certainly something that we are careful with. There's a lot of rare books. We certainly have some rare books. Some that are like the only known copies of things, and those are definitely treated with a lot of precious resources. But as far as actual original research by scientists like Darwin or Einstein, no, nothing like that. A lot of original, wonderful research from scientists who should be better known, who worked at our institution.
Haha, nice one. And an anonymous attendee wants to know, what do you wish was on display that's not, and why?
I want everything to be on display. More than what I wish was on display, I'm often sad when I see things that were proposed to be built and didn't get built.
Oh,
I have a few examples of those. So here's an example of a proposed rethinking dinosaur hall. Look at that.
Oh my God.
So we've got this guy down here and this big dinosaur kind of coming through the wall.
That's rad. I love that there's a person there for scale.
Oh, absolutely. And let's see. Oh, okay. So in the World's Fair, what was the 1964 New York's World Fair, Sinclair Gas Company built all these dinosaurs, and they had like an automated dinosaur exhibit at the World's Fair in New York. And then shortly after that, they proposed to us that we should build a dinosaur park.
Oh,
and this is some photos from the proposed park. It was never built, but like, how cool would that have been?
Yeah, that's amazing. So many selfies these days that,
Yeah, it would have been a really good time.
Oh, I wonder how the dinosaur design kind of would have changed in the decades to come. I wonder if paleontologists would have said, that muscle's not quite where it should have been, if they'd have to give it any facelifts as we know more and more,
No, absolutely. It's kind of the charm of the wrongness of it. It would have been fun too.
Gwen Noda has a question. Who has access to the archive? Do you have students who use it for graduate research? And kind of along that vein, Diane Charlin wants to know, has anyone ever seen a member of the public trying to steal something? So who gets into the archive, and how do you make sure they don't have sticky fingers, like both literally and, theft-wise?
Sure. I mean, as far as students who are interested in museum studies, we take interns all the time, just so you know. We do take interns and volunteers who come in and work with the collections. Everybody's always supervised. And it's the same with researchers. When a researcher has a research question, usually someone will contact us about something in our collection, and I'll let them know if we have it. And I try and provide as much information as I can virtually, because it does take a lot of time and planning to get actually into the museum, even if you're close by. So we try and do as much as we can virtually, and then we make an appointment and you fill out some paperwork. Usually supervised the full experience. We know what's there, so nobody can walk away with anything. There's basic protocols like your bags are checked and things of that nature. So
do you have to wear?
Be careful.
You have to wear those white cotton gloves to handle things?
It depends on the object. We have everybody wash their hands before they handle anything, but if they're going to handle photographs or anything where the oils from your hands would affect the object, then we will give you nitrile or cotton gloves, whatever you're more comfortable with. But typically, if it's just paper, clean hands is a better option.
Right. And one last question from viewers. Judy Citron wants to know, what's something unknown about LA history that you've discovered? Have you come across anything going through papers or maybe you're relatively new to LA, only 3 years. So is there anything that you discovered in the archive that kind of endeared you to LA, or maybe that we don't know?
I feel like it's just a constant falling in love with LA. Everything. My favorite, I guess it's safe to say, my favorite bit of Natural History Museum history is that we had very early on in the early 1900s a woman who started as a grad student, or she was in college still. She was just a baby biology student, called Hildegard Howard. And then she went on to really pioneer avian paleontology through the work she started at the La Brea Tar Pits. And over time, she became the head of science at the museum. So she was with the museum for a really long time. She was a hero of science and really amazing in so many ways. And I love her. I just keep falling in love with Hildegard.
Oh, Hildegard. What was her last name? Hildegard?
Howard, yeah.
Hildegard Howard. Oh, if I had to rename my dog, I think I'd name her Hildegard Howard, because that's a great name for it. Like, Hildegard, get out of the garbage.
I realized we just missed her birthday, but I think next year I'm going to try and propose a Hildegard Howard Day that we can celebrate.
I love it. I'm so on board. And last questions I always ask, what is one thing about your job that is very annoying or irksome? What is something that is just, ugh? Before I ask your favorite thing, just tell me quick, what's your least favorite thing?
I guess it's kind of everybody expecting that you know everything about your collections at all the time. So you'll get a question and everybody expects a really quick response. This is going to take hours of research to get to the bottom of this. And maybe, or also, I guess, in tandem with that, I don't have a record of something unless you've made a record of something. Like, I just can't magic up some past for you. So if it doesn't exist, like, I can't create a record just to make you feel good about it. So that's tough. Managing the expectations can be a little hard.
I imagine that's managing expectations is harder than managing objects, I'm sure. And then what is your favorite thing? Is it the smell of old books? Is it the smell of paper? What do you love about? Is it a disorganized shelf? Like, what gives you butterflies?
I think it's the discovery in opening a new box. I really like that every day is different and that we'll see things often that people haven't seen in a number of years or maybe have completely forgotten about. And every time we open a new container, it's going to be a new just experience of treats and knowledge and things that we can share.
Oh, that's awesome. It's like your birthday and you're like, I know I got something old in here. What's it going to be? Oh, that's exciting.
Gifts everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Or Antiques Roadshow or one of those shows where they open up a storage locker into a bidder. That is really exciting.
Often that's very accurate. It's a weird storage locker where you're like, what are we going to get today? It could be a bag full of trash or it could be the most amazing things we've ever seen.
And, I guess last parting advice to anyone who's watching this who aspires to be more like you, because you're awesome. Any advice you have for people who want to go into work like this?
I guess just be curious, pursue your curiosity, reach out to places where you want to work and try and get as much experience as you can. I feel like people in this field are really receptive and we also have really tiny budgets. So anytime you want to help, we're really looking forward to that. But yeah, just be curious, stay organized.
Amazing. I might have to offline ask you if you have any advice about this Grey's Anatomy. I know that this is a real wincer, so we'll.
It's not that bad. It's a pretty common problem.
Okay, that makes me feel better because every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, my soul dies. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for the amazing work that you do, and just thanks to the NHM for being my favorite place in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Alie. It's really fun to talk to you.
Yeah, it was great to be here. I'll see you at the museum sometime in the future, I'm sure. Bye. Happy first Friday. Or, last Friday. Bye.